The crystal city of Velthara hung in space like a frozen star. Its tall towers caught the light from 3 suns and threw it back in rainbow colors. Inside the city, millions of Velthari lived their perfect lives. They believed in order. They believed in clean bloodlines. They believed that some people brought bad luck just by being alive. Zarathus walked through the white halls one last time. Her daughter Lithara held her hand tight. The little girl was only 6 years old, but she already knew something terrible was happening. The other Velthari they passed would not look at them. Some even stepped away as if touching them might spread the curse. "Mother, where are we going?" Lithara asked in their musical language. Her voice was small and scared. "On a trip, little star," Zarathus said, but her own voice shook. She could not tell her daughter the truth. Not yet. They reached the council chamber. The 7 high seers sat on their crystal thrones. Each one wore white robes that seemed to glow with inner light. Their faces were cold and empty of feeling. The first seer, an ancient female named Yathandra, spoke without standing. "Zarathus, daughter of the void, widow of the cursed, you have brought shadow to our people. Your husband's death proves what we have long known. You carry the gene of misfortune. You poison our pure bloodline with your presence." Zarathus felt anger burn in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "My husband died in a mining accident. A piece of metal fell and crushed him. That was not my fault. That was not anyone's fault." "Everything happens for a reason," said the second seer. "Your husband was strong and healthy. He should have lived for 300 more years. But he died young because you were his mate. Your curse killed him." "That is not true," Zarathus said louder now. "Curthane was my heart. I loved him more than life itself. I would never hurt him." "Love means nothing," Yathandra said. "Blood means everything. And your blood is tainted. Your daughter carries the same poison in her veins. Both of you must be removed before you can harm others." Lithara pressed closer to her mother. She did not understand all the words, but she felt the hatred in the room. It was thick and heavy like a storm cloud. "Please," Zarathus begged. "Lithara is just a child. She has done nothing wrong. If you must exile me, let her stay. Someone else can raise her." "No," the third seer said. "The curse passes from mother to child. She's already infected. In time, she would bring death to whoever tried to care for her. It is better to end the poison now." 2 guards stepped forward. They wore black armor and carried stun weapons. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets. Zarathus picked up her daughter and backed toward the wall. "You cannot do this," she said. "We are citizens. We have rights. You have no rights," Yathandra said. "You are no longer citizens. You are no longer Velthari. You are nothing." "The ship is waiting." The guards moved closer. Zarathus thought about fighting, but what could she do? They were 2 against 7, and she had her daughter to protect. If she fought and lost, they might kill Lithara on the spot. At least exile meant they would still be alive. "Come, little star," she whispered to her daughter. "We must be brave now." They walked between the guards out of the chamber, through the halls and to the transport bay. A small old ship waited for them. It had enough food and water for maybe 30 days. There was a basic shelter pod, some tools, and emergency clothes. Nothing more. "The Moon Kethmore will be your new home," one of the guards said. His voice sounded flat and bored through his helmet. "It has air and some water. What you do with that is your choice." "And if we signal for help?" Zarathus asked. "Any ship that tries to rescue you will be destroyed," the guard said. "You are dead to us now. Stay dead." They pushed Zarathus and Lithara into the ship. The door sealed shut with a sound like breaking glass. A few minutes later, the ship began to move. Through the small window, Zarathus watched her home city grow smaller and smaller until it was just another bright star in the darkness. Lithara was crying now. Not loud sobs, but quiet tears that ran down her pale cheeks. Zarathus held her daughter close and tried to be strong. "Are we really cursed, Mother?" Lithara asked. Zarathus looked into her daughter's large golden eyes. Those eyes were so much like her father's. Curthane had been good and kind and strong. There was no curse in him, and there was no curse in their child. "No, little star," she said. "We are not cursed. We are just different. And sometimes people fear what they do not understand. Will Father find us on the new moon?" Zarathus felt her heart break a little more. "Father has gone to join the ancestors," she said softly. "But he is watching over us. He will help us be strong." The ship flew for 3 days. Zarathus tried to make it fun for Lithara. They played word games and sang old songs. They looked out the window at passing stars and made up stories about what might live there. But inside, Zarathus was terrified. She had never lived anywhere but the Crystal City. She did not know how to survive in the wild. On the third day, they saw Kethmore growing larger ahead of them. It was a brown and gray rock with thin clouds wrapped around it. There were no lights on its surface. No cities, no signs of life at all. The ship's computer said the air was breathable and the gravity was close to normal. That was all. The ship landed hard in a flat area between some low hills. The engine shut down with a whining sound, and then everything was quiet. Zarathus opened the door and stepped outside with her daughter. The air was thin and cold. It smelled like dust and something else she could not name. In the distance, she could see tall rock formations that looked like broken teeth. The sky was gray-brown and only one small sun gave any light. "It is very quiet here," Lithara said in a whisper. "Yes," Zarathus agreed, "but quiet can be peaceful." They spent the rest of that day unloading their supplies from the ship. The shelter pod was easy to set up. It made a small but warm room where they could sleep. They had enough food tablets for maybe 25 days if they were careful. Water was the bigger problem. The ship's scanner had found some underground springs in the nearby hills, but they were far away. That night, as Lithara slept, Zarathus sat outside the shelter and looked up at the stars. She could see the Crystal City in the distance, still shining like a jewel. Her people were up there, probably already forgetting that she and her daughter had ever existed. "We will show them," she whispered to the empty air. "We will survive. We will prove that we are not cursed. And maybe someday they will realize how wrong they were." But even as she said the words, she wondered if they were true. The moon was harsh and empty. Their supplies would not last long, and she was just one woman trying to protect her child in a place where no one had ever lived before. Still, she had to try. For Lithara, for Curthane's memory, for herself, they were not cursed. They were just beginning. 3 months passed on the gray moon. Zarathus had learned many hard lessons about staying alive. She learned which rocks held water when the thin rain fell. She learned that the purple moss growing in the deepest caves could be eaten, even though it tasted awful. She learned that the small, 6-legged creatures that lived in the cracks between stones could be caught if you were very patient and very quiet. But they were losing the fight. Lithara was getting thinner every day. Her golden eyes looked too big in her pale face. She tried to be brave, tried to smile when her mother looked at her, but Zarathus could see the truth. They were both dying slowly. The food tablets had run out 2 weeks ago. The water was harder to find as the weather got colder. Worse, Zarathus could feel something breaking inside herself. Not her body, but her spirit. She had been so sure they could survive, but the moon was too harsh. There was not enough life here to support them. She sat by their small fire watching Lithara sleep. Her daughter was curled up in the warmest blanket they had, but she was still shivering. Tomorrow, Zarathus would have to go farther from their shelter to look for food. The nearby areas had been picked clean. That was when the sky caught fire. At first, she thought it was a meteor. A bright streak of light crossed overhead, trailing orange flames. But then she realized it was moving wrong. It was slowing down. It was under control. It was a ship. Zarathus shook her daughter awake. "Lithara, look!" The little girl sat up and rubbed her eyes. Together, they watched the burning shape get bigger as it came closer. It was definitely a ship, but not like any Velthari vessel. This one was boxy and ugly with strange angles and what looked like armor plating on its hull. "Is it our people?" Lithara asked hopefully. "No, little star," Zarathus said. She had studied other races in school, back when she thought such knowledge was just interesting instead of vital. "I think it is human." The ship crashed about 2 miles away behind a ridge of red rocks. The sound echoed across the empty landscape like thunder. Then everything was quiet again. Zarathus felt her heart beating fast. The Velthari had always said humans were dangerous. They called them chaos bringers and destroyers of order. The few times human ships had come near Velthari space, they had been turned away without contact. But what if the stories were wrong? "Mother?" Lithara asked. "Should we go see?" Zarathus looked at her daughter's thin face. They were going to die anyway. Maybe the human would kill them, but maybe they could help each other. "Yes," she said. "We should go see." They packed their few supplies and walked toward the crash site. The ground was rough and covered with loose stones that cut their feet through their worn shoes. It took them most of the day to reach the ridge. On the other side, they found the human ship. It had hit hard, digging a long furrow in the ground before coming to rest against a cliff face. The hull was cracked and smoking. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere, but the ship was not dead. Lights still blinked on its control surfaces, and she could hear the hum of working machines. "Hello?" Zarathus called out in the standard trade language that most spacefaring races knew. "Is anyone alive?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the hull opened with a grinding sound. A figure appeared in the doorway, and Zarathus got her first look at a real human. He was shorter than she had expected, but broader in the shoulders. His skin was darker than hers, a warm brown color that seemed strange but not unpleasant. His hair was black and cut very short. He wore clothes that looked tough and practical, not beautiful like Velthari garments, but made for hard work. Most surprising were his eyes. She had expected them to be cruel or wild, but they were just tired. And when he saw her and Lithara, they became worried. "Are you hurt?" the human asked in accented but clear trade language. He stepped carefully out of his ship, favoring his left leg. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut on his forehead. "We are not hurt," Zarathus said. "But you are. We can help." The human looked confused. "Help? Who are you?" "What are you doing on this moon?" "My chart said it was empty." "We live here," Zarathus said, which was true enough. "I am Zarathus. This is my daughter, Lithara. What are you called?" "Marcus Chen," the human said. He was looking back and forth between them, clearly trying to understand. "You live here? How?" "There's nothing on this rock. We make do," Zarathus said. She could see that Marcus was hurt worse than he wanted to admit. There was blood on his clothes, and he kept putting weight on his right foot like his left one would not hold him. "Please, let us help you. In return, maybe you can share some of your food?" Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Food, lady? I've got emergency rations for maybe 2 weeks. After that, we're all in the same boat." "Boat?" Lithara asked, speaking for the first time. Marcus looked down at her and his expression changed. Became softer. "It's just an expression, kid. It means we're all in trouble together." He paused. "How long have you been here?" 3 months, Zarathus said. 3 months? How are you still alive?" "Very carefully," she said. "And not for much longer, I think." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can see that. You both look like you've been through hell." He made a decision. "All right. You help patch me up. I'll share what supplies I have." "Fair deal." "Fair deal," Zarathus agreed. They went into Marcus's ship together. It was cramped and messy inside, nothing like the clean lines of Velthari design. But it was warm, and it smelled like machine oil and something else that was not unpleasant. Human smell, she realized. Marcus showed them his medical kit. Zarathus had learned some healing as a child. It was considered a proper skill for Velthari females. She cleaned the cut on his head and used the ship's scanner to check his leg. It was badly bruised but not broken. While she worked, Marcus opened a box of human food and handed Lithara something called a nutrition bar. The little girl bit into it and her eyes went wide. It was the first sweet thing she had tasted in months. "Easy there," Marcus said with a smile. "Don't make yourself sick." "It tastes like starflowers," Lithara said in wonder. "Starflowers?" "A sweet fruit from our home," Zarathus explained. She was putting a bandage on Marcus's forehead. "She has not had anything like it for a long time." "Home," Marcus repeated. "Where's home? And why aren't you there?" Zarathus felt her face go tight. "We are not welcome there anymore." Marcus looked at her carefully. "Exiles. Something like that. I see." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Well, for what it's worth, you're welcome here. Not that I own this place, but still." It was a small thing, but it meant more to Zarathus than Marcus could know. For the first time in months, someone had said they were welcome somewhere. "Thank you," she said softly. Over the next few hours, Marcus showed them around his ship. It was a cargo hauler, he explained. He bought and sold goods between different star systems. He had been heading for a mining station when his engine failed, and this moon was the only place he could make an emergency landing. "So we're stuck here until I can fix the drive," he said. "Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on how bad the damage is." "We can help," Zarathus offered. "I know some things about machines." "Yeah? What kind of things?" She showed him how Velthari crystal technology worked, how they grew living circuits that could repair themselves and adapt to damage. Marcus was fascinated. His own technology was different, EWR metal and electricity instead of crystal and light OWR. But some of the principles were the same. Damn, he said. If we could combine your crystal tech with my power systems, we might actually get out of here. That night, they shared Marcus's food and sat around a small heater in his ship. Lithara fell asleep curled up between them, warmer and more fed than she had been in weeks. So, Marcus said quietly, you want to tell me what really happened? Why you're here? Zarathus looked at him for a long time. In the soft light of the heater, his face looked kind. Not the face of a chaos bringer or destroyer of order, just the face of someone who was trying to help. So she told him about her husband's death, about the curse, about the exile, about everything. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long time. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, he said finally. Stupid? Genetic curses? Poisoned bloodlines? Lady, that's not science, that's superstition. Your husband died in an accident. Accidents happen. They don't happen because of who you're married to, the seers said. Oh. The seers were wrong, Marcus said firmly, and cruel. Throwing out a mother and child because of some made-up curse? That's not justice. That's just fear. Zarathus felt something warm spread through her chest. You believe me? I believe you, Marcus said. More than that, I believe in you. You've kept yourself and your daughter alive on this rock for 3 months with basically nothing. That's not cursed. That's impressive as hell. For the first time since her husband's death, Zarathus smiled a real smile. Maybe the human stories were wrong about more than just chaos and destruction. The next few weeks changed everything. Marcus turned out to be more than just a trader. He had been a soldier before, something called a colonial marine. He knew how to survive in hard places, how to find food where there seemed to be none, how to make shelter that would last through storms. More importantly, he was willing to teach. First rule of survival, he told Zarathus and Lithara on their 4th day together. Don't just look for what you need. Look for what you can use to get what you need. He showed them how to set traps for the small cave creatures using pieces of his ship's broken hull. The traps were simple but clever, much better than trying to catch the quick little animals by hand. Within 2 days, they had caught enough to have meat for the first time since the exile began. How did you learn this? Zarathus asked as they cooked their catch over a fire Marcus had built. Hard way, Marcus said. Got stranded on a jungle planet for 6 months when I was in the service. Had to learn fast or die slow. He poked at the fire with a stick. After that, I figured it was smart to know how to take care of yourself anywhere. Lithara was fascinated by everything Marcus did. She followed him around the crash site, asking endless questions. Why did he build the fire that way? How did the traps work? What were all the different tools in his kit for? Marcus was patient with her in a way that surprised Zarathus. Back home, adults rarely had time for children's questions, but Marcus would stop whatever he was doing to explain things to Lithara, usually with examples she could understand. See this? He said, showing her a small device from his toolkit. It's a sonic scanner. It sends out sound waves we can't hear, then tells us what's on the other side of a wall or underground. Like the way some birds find fish in deep water? Lithara asked. Exactly like that, Marcus said, grinning. You're a smart kid, you know that? Lithara beamed. It had been a long time since anyone had called her smart. On the ship that brought them here, the guards had talked about her like she was diseased. Like intelligence in a cursed child was somehow dangerous. As the days passed, they fell into a routine. Mornings were for finding water and checking the traps. Afternoons were for working on the ship or improving their shelter. Evenings were for sharing food and stories around the fire. Marcus had stories from dozens of worlds. He told them about the ice cities of Kython, where people carved their homes from frozen waterfalls. He described the floating forests of Verdant, where trees grew so tall they touched the clouds. He talked about Earth, the human homeworld with its blue oceans and green lands. Is it beautiful? Lithara asked one night. Parts of it, Marcus said. There are places where you can see for 100 miles in every direction. Nothing but grass moving in the wind. And there are mountains so tall they have snow on top even when the valleys are warm. Will we ever see it? Marcus looked at Zarathus. They had been talking about the future more and more lately. His ship could be repaired, but it would take time. Weeks, maybe months. And when it was fixed, where would they go? Maybe, Marcus said. If your mother wants to. Zarathus felt her heart skip. The idea of leaving this moon, of seeing new places, was exciting and terrifying at the same time. But more than that, the way Marcus said, if your mother wants to, made it sound like they were a family making plans together. The work on the ship was going better than expected. Marcus's engineering was good, but Zarathus's crystal technology was making things possible that should not have been possible. She had learned to grow crystals that could store power, carry signals, even repair damaged metal by encouraging it to flow back into the right shape. Your people are crazy for exiling you, Marcus said one day, as they watched a crystal matrix slowly fix a cracked power conduit. You could revolutionize starship design with this stuff. The Velthari do not share technology with outsiders, Zarathus said. They believe it would contaminate the purity of their knowledge. More stupid superstition, Marcus muttered. They'd rather be pure than useful. You do not understand, Zarathus said. For my people, purity is everything. Clean bloodlines, clean thoughts, clean technology. They believe that mixing things leads to chaos. And what do you believe? Zarathus looked at the crystal matrix, glowing softly as it did work that pure human or pure Velthari technology could not do alone. I believe that sometimes mixing things makes them stronger. Marcus smiled. Now you're thinking like a human. But it was not just the technology that was mixing. The three of them were becoming something new together. A family that was not related by blood but by choice and need and growing affection. Marcus taught Lithara human games. Simple ones at first, like 20 questions and I Spy. Then more complex ones that helped her learn to think in new ways. Games about strategy and problem solving and seeing patterns. Humans learn by playing, he explained to Zarathus. It makes the brain grow stronger. Like exercise makes muscles grow stronger. Lithara was growing stronger in other ways too. The steady food and the safety of their improved shelter had brought color back to her cheeks. She laughed more. She asked questions about everything, and sometimes, late at night when she thought the adults were asleep, Zarathus heard her practicing human words under her breath. She is happy here, Zarathus said one evening as they watched Lithara play with a puzzle Marcus had made for her. Are you? Marcus asked. The question caught her off guard. Was she happy? For months, she had been focused only on survival, but now, sitting by a warm fire with a full belly and her daughter safe beside her, she realized that she was something more than just surviving. Yes, she said, surprised by how true it felt. I think I am. Good, Marcus said. You deserve to be happy, do I? The words came out before she could stop them. The seers said I was cursed, that I brought misfortune to everyone around me. What if they were right? What if something terrible happens to you because you helped us? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took her hand. His skin was warm and rough from work, very different from the smooth coolness of Velthari touch. Zara, he said, look around. When I crashed here, I was alone and hurt with a busted ship and enough food for 2 weeks. Now I've got help fixing my ship. I've got enough food for months, and I've got 2 people I care about watching my back. If you're cursed, it's the luckiest curse in the galaxy. Tears came to her eyes. Happy tears, she realized. She had almost forgotten what those felt like. Besides, Marcus added with a grin, I was never superstitious. Had to be practical in the Marines. You believe in what works, not what sounds pretty. And what works? This, Marcus said, gesturing at their small camp. The 3 of us taking care of each other. Mixing your knowledge with mine to build something better than either of us could make alone. That works. That night after Lithara had fallen asleep, Zarathus and Marcus sat by the dying fire and talked about the future. Not just about fixing the ship, but about what would happen after. Where they would go. What they would do. I have been thinking, Zarathus said slowly. When the ship is ready, we should leave this place. All 3 of us. You want to come with me? If you will have us. Lithara needs to see that there is more to the universe than what the Velthari taught her. And she paused, searching for the right words. I want to learn more about humans. About the way you think, the way you solve problems, the way you make families out of strangers. Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. You know, I've been alone for a long time. Since I left the service, it gets lonely, traveling from port to port with no one to talk to but cargo clerks and customs officials. And now I can't imagine going back to that, Marcus said. The ship's big enough for 3. We could see the galaxy together. Trade in places where mixed crews are welcome, maybe find others like us. Others like us? People who don't fit in the neat little boxes their societies made for them, Marcus said. Exiles, wanderers, people who choose their own families. The idea was both scary and wonderful. To leave everything familiar behind and venture into the unknown with only each other to depend on. But as Zarathus looked at Marcus's honest face and listened to her daughter's peaceful breathing, she realized it did not feel like losing everything. It felt like gaining everything that mattered. Yes, she said. Let us see the galaxy together. They shook hands on it the way Marcus said humans sealed important agreements. But then, without quite planning it, the handshake became a hug. Brief and awkward at first, but warm and real. They were not Velthari anymore. They were not quite human either. They were something new. Something that worked. 2 more months passed in peace. The ship was almost ready to fly again. Marcus had taught them so much about survival and technology that Zarathus sometimes forgot how hopeless things had seemed before he arrived. Lithara was stronger and happier than she had ever been. She could speak human standard language almost perfectly now, and she had learned to use tools that would have amazed the seers back home. Everything was perfect. That should have been their first warning. Zarathus was working on the ship's crystal array when Lithara came running from the ridge where she liked to play. Mother. Marcus, she called in human language. There is a ship coming. They all looked up at the sky. Sure enough, there was a bright dot growing larger against the gray clouds. As it got closer, Zarathus felt her blood turn cold. She knew that shape. Long and elegant, with flowing lines that looked grown rather than built. A Velthari ship, get inside, Marcus said quietly. Both of you? No, Zarathus said. If they have come for us, hiding will not help. Better to face them with dignity. The Velthari ship landed gracefully about 100 yards away from their camp. It was much bigger than the transport that had brought them here. A warship designed to enforce the will of the seers. As its doors opened, 12 figures in white robes stepped out, followed by 6 guards in black armor. Leading them was someone Zarathus recognized with a sick feeling in her stomach, High Seer Corthane, the youngest and most rigid of the council. He was tall even for a Velthari, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. He had always believed that any impurity in their people should be burned away completely. The seers and guards walked toward their camp in perfect formation. Their faces showed no emotion at all, as if they were looking at interesting rocks instead of living people. Zarathus of the Void, Corthane said in the flowing Velthari language. You were sent here to die, but you live. This confirms what we suspected. Your curse has grown stronger. I am not cursed, Zarathus said, stepping forward. Marcus moved to stand beside her, and after a moment, Lithara took her mother's hand. The evidence says otherwise, Corthane said. His cold eyes moved to Marcus. Not only do you survive where you should have died, but you have contaminated yourself with alien influence. You have brought chaos and disorder to this pure place. This place was empty, Marcus said in careful Velthari. Zarathus was surprised he had learned so much of their language. We haven't hurt anyone. You have hurt the natural order, said one of the other seers. Your very existence here is an offense to cosmic balance. Corthane raised his hand for silence. We did not come here to debate philosophy with a human. We came to finish what should have been finished months ago. He gestured to the guards. Kill them all. Wait, Zarathus said. You have no right to execute us. We are in exile, not under death sentence. Your exile was meant to be death, Corthane said coldly. The fact that you have survived this long only proves how dangerous you are. Your cursed blood has given you unnatural resilience. Your daughter shows the same taint. And now you have spread your poison to this human. My poison? Zarathus felt anger burning in her chest. What poison? We have done nothing but survive. You have done more than survive, another seer said. Our sensors detect technology that should not exist. Human machines merged with Velthari crystals. Abomination. That's not abomination, Marcus said, stepping forward. That's innovation. Your people could learn from it if you weren't so afraid of anything different. The guards raised their weapons. Marcus tensed, ready to fight even though he was completely outnumbered. But before anyone could move, Lithara spoke up. Why are you so scared of us? She asked in perfect Velthari. The seers looked startled. They had probably expected a cowering child, not someone who would question them directly. We are not scared, child, Corthane said. We are protecting our people from corruption. But we are not corrupting anything, Lithara said. We are growing, learning. Before Marcus came, we were dying. Now we are strong. That is not corruption. That is improvement. Silence, Corthane snapped. You are too young to understand the danger you represent. I understand more than you think, Lithara said. Her golden eyes were bright with intelligence, and something else, power. I understand that you are afraid because we prove your beliefs are wrong. Our beliefs are eternal truth, one of the other seers said. Then why are you afraid to test them? Lithara asked. Something strange was happening. The air around the little girl seemed to shimmer slightly, and Zarathus could feel a pressure in her mind that she had never experienced before. Lithara was using her telepathic abilities, but stronger than any child should be able to. You want to see the truth? Lithara said. Then see it. Suddenly images flooded through the minds of everyone present. Not words or explanations, but pure memory and emotion. The despair Zarathus had felt when they were first abandoned. The terror of watching her daughter grow thin and weak. The moment of hope when Marcus's ship crashed. The gradual building of trust. The joy of learning new things. The warmth of becoming a family. But more than that, Lithara showed them the technical advances they had made. Crystal matrices that could repair themselves and adapt to damage. Power systems that were more efficient than anything the Velthari had developed in centuries. Survival techniques that could keep people alive in the harshest conditions. This is what happens when different peoples work together, Lithara's voice said directly into their minds. Not chaos, not corruption, growth. The images faded, leaving everyone silent. Several of the younger seers looked shaken. Even some of the guards seemed uncertain. But Corthane's face was harder than ever. Tricks, he said. Mind manipulation. This only proves how dangerous the child has become. She must be destroyed before she can spread her influence further. No, Marcus said flatly. That's not happening. You would fight all of us to protect two exiles? Corthane asked. I would fight an army to protect my family, Marcus said. And they are my family now, whether you like it or not. Touching, Corthane said. But futile. Guards, kill the human first. Let the others watch what happens to those who interfere with Velthari justice. The guards started to raise their weapons again. Marcus shifted into a fighting stance, even though Zarathus could see he knew it was hopeless. She felt her own heart racing, searching for some way to save the people she loved. But before anyone could act, one of the younger seers stepped forward. Wait, he said. High Seer, perhaps we should consider what we have seen. There is nothing to consider, Genthalor, Corthane said angrily. These are exiles. Cursed ones. They must die. But are they cursed? Genthalor asked. Look at them. Look at what they have accomplished. They were sent here to die, but they live. They were given nothing, but they have built something remarkable. They were alone, but they have found friendship with another species. Where is the curse in this? The curse is in their very existence, Corthane said. Or perhaps, said another young seer, the curse was in our willingness to abandon them. More voices joined in. Not all of the seers, but enough to matter. The guards looked uncertain, glancing back and forth between their orders and the growing dissent in their ranks. You forget yourselves, Corthane said. I am the High Seer here. My word is law. Your word is one voice among many, Genthaler said, and many of us now question whether this action serves the greater good. Corthane's face went pale with rage. You would side with exiles and aliens over your own people? I would side with truth over tradition, Genthaler said quietly. The standoff stretched for long moments. Weapons were still raised, but nobody was firing. The seers were arguing among themselves in low, intense voices. The guards looked more and more uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, Corthane made a sound of disgust. Very well, he said. We will return to the council and discuss this matter further. But know this, exiles. If you are ever seen in Velthari space again, there will be no debate. You will be destroyed on sight. We understand, Zarathus said. Do you? Corthane asked. Do you understand that you can never go home? That you will always be outcasts? That your daughter will grow up without knowing her own people's heritage? Zarathus looked at Marcus, then at Lithara, then back at the High Seer. Our heritage is not defined by bloodlines or birth planets, she said. It is defined by who we choose to become and who we choose to love. In that sense, we are already home. Corthane stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back toward his ship. Most of the other seers followed, but Genthalor lingered. "I am sorry," he said quietly to Zarathus, "for what was done to you, for what nearly happened today. Some of us are beginning to understand that fear has made us smaller than we should be." "Understanding is the first step toward wisdom," Zarathus said. "Perhaps there is hope for our people yet." "Perhaps," Genthalor said. "But be careful out there. Not all Velthari will be as open to new ideas as some of us are becoming." He walked away, leaving the three of them alone beside their small ship. "Well," Marcus said after the Velthari vessel had disappeared into the sky, "that was fun." Lithara giggled. "Were you really going to fight all of them for us?" Without hesitation, Marcus said. "That's what families do." Zarathus felt tears on her cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. "The ship is ready," she said. "We can leave any time we want. Where should we go first?" 6 months later, their ship drifted through the colorful clouds of the Helix Nebula. Marcus was at the controls. Zarathus was monitoring the crystal arrays, and Lithara was in the cargo bay helping their newest passengers get settled. They were not alone anymore. Word had spread quietly through the outer systems about a strange crew that took on passengers nobody else would carry, exiles, refugees, people who did not fit anywhere else. The ship that had once carried trade goods now carried hope. Their first passenger had been a young Cytherian who had been cast out for refusing an arranged marriage. Then came an old Terran scientist whose ideas were too radical for the academic establishment. After that, a family of Rigelian farmers whose crop mutations had been declared unnatural by their government. Each passenger stayed for a while, learning and healing and finding their strength again. Some found new homes on frontier worlds where differences were welcomed instead of feared. Others chose to stay and help with the mission. The ship was crowded now, but it felt alive in a way it never had when Marcus traveled alone. "Status report," Marcus called from the pilot's seat. "All systems stable," Zarathus replied. "The new crystal matrix is working perfectly. We're getting 30% better efficiency than last month." "Passengers are secure," Lithara added, her voice coming through the comm system. At 7 years old, she was already the ship's best translator and mediator. She could speak 9 languages fluently and had a gift for helping scared people feel safe. "Good," Marcus said, "because we've got a message coming in. It's from the Velthari." Zarathus felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of message?" "Not sure yet. It's coded, but it's not using military encryption. Looks more like diplomatic channels?" The message resolved on their main screen. To Zarathus's surprise, it was not one of the old seers. It was Genthalor, the young seer who had spoken up for them that day on Kethmore. "Greetings, Zarathus of the Void," he said formally. "I hope this message finds you well. I contact you with news from the Crystal Cities. Much has changed since your departure." Lithara had come up from the cargo bay to listen. She stood between Marcus and her mother, holding both their hands. "The events on Kethmore sparked great debate among our people," Genthalor continued. "Many of the younger seers began to question whether exile and genetic purity were truly the path to wisdom. We studied the recordings from your ship's technology. We analyzed the methods you used to survive and thrive in impossible conditions." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "We realized that we had exiled not our weakest members but some of our strongest. People whose only crime was thinking differently than tradition demanded." Marcus squeezed Lithara's hand. "Sounds like your people are learning," he murmured. 3 weeks ago, Genthalor went on, the council voted to end the practice of exile for genetic reasons. High Seer Korthine opposed this change, and has left the Crystal Cities to found a colony for those who wish to maintain the old ways. He is welcome to his purity. The rest of us choose growth. Zarathus felt tears in her eyes. After all this time, vindication. "More than this," Genthalor said. "We would like to open dialogue with other species, to learn from them as you learned from your human companion. We would like to invite you to return as our first ambassador to the outer worlds, to help us build bridges where we once built only walls." The message ended, leaving them in silence for a long moment. "So," Marcus said finally, "looks like you could go home if you wanted to." Zarathus looked around their ship. In the cargo bay, she could hear the quiet voices of refugees who were slowly becoming family. On the console in front of her, Status lights showed crystal technology and human engineering working perfectly together. Beside her, Lithara was growing into someone who could speak to anyone, understand anyone, help anyone. "This is home," she said. "This ship. These people. This work we do. The crystal cities were where I was born, but this is where I belong." "Are you sure?" Lithara asked. "We could visit. I would like to see where you and Father lived." "We could visit," Zarathus agreed. "Someday. When our work here is not so needed. But I think our place is with the outcasts and wanderers, helping them find their own strength." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Besides, I like what we've built here. Our own little piece of chaos in an orderly universe." "It is not chaos," Lithara said solemnly. "It is harmony. Different voices singing together instead of all the same note." "When did you get so wise?" Marcus asked, ruffling her hair. "I learned from the best teachers," she said, hugging both of them. 3 hours later, they were approaching the trade station at Epsilon Junction. It was a rough place, full of smugglers and rebels and people who lived on the edges of civilized space. Exactly the kind of place where they might find passengers who needed a new start. "Incoming transmission," Marcus announced. "It's from the station." A gruff human voice crackled over the comm. "Unknown vessel, this is station control. State your business." "This is the cargo ship Wandering Star," Marcus replied. "We're looking for passengers who need transport to frontier colonies." "Passengers? What kind of passengers?" Zarathus took the comm. "The kind that other ships won't carry," she said. "People who need a second chance. People who don't fit in the boxes their world's made for them." There was a long pause. Then the station controller laughed. "Lady, you just described half the people on this station. Docking Bay 7 is yours. I'll spread the word that you're here." As they approached the station, Lithara pressed her face to the window. "Look at all the different ships," she said excitedly. "I bet there are people from dozens of worlds here." "Hundreds, probably," Marcus said. "Each one with their own story, their own dreams, their own reasons for needing a fresh start," Zarathus added. They docked smoothly. Within an hour, there was a line of people waiting to speak with them. A young Martian whose cybernetic implants made him unemployable on traditional worlds. An elderly Centaurian couple whose children had died, and who wanted to spend their remaining years helping others. A family of Andromedan musicians whose traditional songs had been banned as subversive. One by one, they interviewed the hopefuls. Not everyone was a good fit, or some were running from crimes rather than persecution, and those they politely turned away. But most were exactly the kind of people they had learned to help. Good people who had been labeled as problems by societies that valued conformity over creativity. "We can take 12 more passengers," Marcus announced as the day ended. "But we're going to be pretty crowded." "Crowded is good," Lithara said. "It means more stories, more languages, more ways of seeing things." That night, as their new passengers settled into makeshift quarters throughout the ship, the three of them sat in the observation lounge and watched the stars wheel slowly past the windows. "Do you think we're making a difference?" Zarathus asked. "Look around," Marcus said. 6 months ago, the Cytherian girl was planning to kill herself rather than submit to a marriage she didn't want. Now she's running a shelter for abused women on New Geneva. The Terran scientist has a lab where he can pursue his research without censorship. The Rigelian family is growing crops that could feed millions. And the Velthari are reconsidering everything they thought they knew about genetic purity." Lithara added. "Because they saw what we accomplished together." Marcus nodded. "I'd say we're making a difference. One person at a time, one family at a time, one world at a time." Zarathus leaned back in her chair and smiled. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago. Broken, afraid, convinced that she was cursed and worthless. That woman could never have imagined this life, this purpose, this joy. "The seers were right about one thing," she said. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "I'm not the same person I was when I lived in the Crystal Cities. I have been changed by contact with humans and other species. I have been corrupted by new ideas and different ways of thinking." Marcus and Lithara both looked concerned. "But," Zarathus continued with a grin, "it turns out that corruption can be a wonderful thing." They laughed together, and the sound echoed through the ship, mixing with the voices of refugees who were becoming family, with the hum of crystal and metal technology working in harmony, with the endless song of stars that promised infinite possibilities for those brave enough to reach for them. Outside the windows, the galaxy turned in its ancient dance. But inside the ship, something new was being born. Something that had never existed before and would never exist again. Something that proved beyond doubt that the best things in the universe came not from purity, but from the courage to mix, to blend, to become more than the sum of your parts. They were no longer Velthari or human or any single thing. They were something better. They were family. They were home. They were hope with wings, flying between the stars and carrying the lost toward light. And in the end, that was the greatest form of humanity any species could aspire to. Not human in biology, but human in spirit. The spirit that said no one should be alone. The spirit that said everyone deserved a chance. The spirit that said the most important family was the one you chose for yourself.